Zoma would say. Before I jump into what he says, who is Ben Zoma? His name was Shimon Ben Zoma. He was first, second century CE sage. He was a contemporary of Rabbi Akiva. Actually, they don't call him rabbi because he passed away young. He was still a pupil at that time, but after we read his sayings in the Haggadah, we read his sayings in many different places. You can tell this is a person with tremendous amount of knowledge. He was really on the level of one of the greats, but for whatever reason, he never got his semicha. He never finished his studying, and they don't call him Rabbi Shimon Ben Zoma. They just call him Ben Zoma. It's interesting if you know the story of the four sages who went into the Pardes. I'm not going to go into that right now, but basically a group of four sages that studied some Kabbalah that was so deep and so mystical and stuff that human beings shouldn't know. So the story goes that these four sages went in, and the only one who came out was Rabbi Akiva, the only one who came out okay. One rabbi became a heretic, one rabbi died. Ben Zoma, it says that he went a little meshuggah, he went a little crazy after what he saw in the Pardes, what he saw through studying this Kabbalah. The only one who came out is his contemporary, Rabbi Akiva, who we're going to celebrate and talk about his life in Lag BaOmer, that's this coming Tuesday. All right, so that's who Ben Zoma is. What does he say? Let's jump right into it. Ben Zoma says, who is wise? Eza hu chacham. Who is a wise person? One who learns from every person. As it states in Psalms, from all my teachers I have grown wise. For your testimonials are my meditation. Very nice. Who is strong? A person who conquers their own inclinations. As it states in Proverbs, better one who is slow to anger than one with might, one who rules their spirit than the conqueror of a city. Who is rich? A person who is satisfied with their lot. As it's stated in Psalms, if you eat of the toil of your hands, fortunate are you, and good is to you. Fortunate are you in this world, and good is to you in the world to come. And then Ben Zoma says, who is honored? The person who honors their fellow creature. As is stated in Samuel and the prophets, for to those who honor me, I accord honor, and those who scorn me will be demeaned. This is the Mishnah. Just reading it at face value, it's beautiful, it's brilliant, wonderful lessons to live by. During this class, I'm going to try to dig a little deeper into each one of these teachings. Basically, what we see over here is Ben Zoma is giving us insight into four important areas of our life, and that is the area of wisdom, power, wealth, and honor. Ben Zoma is giving us the Torah, the Mishnah's perspective in these four areas. Let's start with wisdom. So in the common perception of wisdom, when you see a teacher and a student, you assume the teacher is the one with the greater knowledge and wisdom, right? And the student is the one with less. In the Torah's model, everything is completely reversed. The truly wise person is the one who finds that they can learn something from everyone, including those whose knowledge is inferior to theirs. Very wise words. It reminds me of the joke. So a fellow's hiking in the mountains with his friends, and he comes upon a little cave, and he goes inside and he finds a lamp. You know, so he rubs the lamp, because when you find a lamp, that's what you're supposed to do, and out pops a genie. And the genie says, I'll give you a choice. You could have one of these two wishes. You could have wisdom or wealth. This man was a man of principle, so he says, give me wisdom. Unbelievable, the genie touches him on the forehead, and all of a sudden a light appears. There's music in the background. Ah! And everyone leans forward, like, what kind of wisdom is this young man is going to spew? What's he going to say? He's just given wisdom. And he looks at the lamp and he looks at everyone and he says, I should have taken the money. But anyway, that's just a joke. So what's the next area of life that the Mishnah is giving us inspiration for? That is the area, the idea of power. Usually we think of a powerful person as somebody who imposes their power on other people. That's what power is. And the Torah's idea of power is just the opposite. A truly powerful person is someone who not restrains other people or controls other people, but a truly powerful person is a person that controls themselves. That's where real strength is. Let's talk about wealth. The common conception of wealth is a person who's has a big ambition and a drive to to get a lot of money and a lot of possessions. And the Torah idea of wealth is the opposite, someone who is satisfied with what they have, regardless of how little that is. That is, if someone's happy, that's the greatest wealth. And of course, honor is usually understood as a product of a person who achieved either wisdom or power or wealth, right? Such a person would look down at other people who are perhaps inferior. The Torah's idea of honor is the opposite. A truly honored person is somebody who's able to honor somebody else. Okay, so these are the four areas. Let's look at it a little deeper, and let's try to dig a little deeper and see what kind of lessons we can come up with. Who is a wise person? So he said, someone who learns from every single person. How do you say a Torah scholar in Hebrew, in Jewish? What do you say? A Talmud Chacham. That's a Torah scholar. But if you think about it, like, what's Talmud Chacham mean? It means a student of wisdom. Talmud, a student, Chacham of wisdom. So a wise person or a Torah scholar is actually not a teacher as much as a student. That's the first important point to remember. And we have to be able to learn something from everyone. Now, the question is, how do I learn something from the people who are perhaps inferior, let's say even morally? Let's say there's a person who's just a bad, nasty person, a person that's not kind, that's selfish, that has bad character traits, hurts people. So I'm supposed to, if I want to be a wise person, I'm supposed to learn from them. How do you learn from someone who is of a negative moral standard? So the sages, on a simple level, the sages tell us it's very simple. When you see someone behaving in a way that is not proper, well, we should think to ourselves, note to self, don't act that way. Everything this person does, do the opposite. Okay, that's a simple way of looking at it. But the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement, has a very interesting outlook on what happens when we see negativity in other people. And so this is a very daring teaching, but you need to open your mind to appreciate it. The Baal Shem Tov says that when I see something negative in someone else, I should remember every person serves as a mirror to myself. When I see something negative in someone else, God is giving me an opportunity to realize that I also have some negativity in my own mind, in my own heart, in my own soul. Now, maybe it's not on the same level as that other person, what they're doing, because that person might be doing something horrible that I don't actually do. But the fact that I could identify that negativity in another person means that in some way that negativity exists within me. So before I ridicule someone else, I should stop and do a little exercise and say, is there any way that in my heart, in my mind, is there any way that I have that negative quality? Maybe not on that level, but does that exist within me? And then if it does, we have to work on it. And only afterwards can we look at the other person and try to correct them. actually last week's parsha, it says that we should reprimand other people. But there's a double lashon, and the sages tell us the double language is that before we rebuke other people first, it says rebuke your fellow. First, we have to rebuke ourselves. So the Baal Shem Tov gives us, like I said, it's very daring teaching. It's if you see negative in someone, it's because maybe your own vision also has some negativity as well. You know the story of the person who walked around and said, everything's so dirty. Looked around his house. Oh, my house is so dirty. Looked at his children. Oh, my children are so dirty. Went outside. Oh, the streets are so dirty. And someone went to him and said, sir, come here. Let me show you something. He took a cloth and cleaned the guy's glasses. And he says, here you go. The guy looked around and said, oh, everything's so clean. It's a miracle. So sometimes our own vision is clouded. So a wise person learns from everyone, and we have to try to find something that we can learn, even from people that are on a lesser moral standing than ourselves. That's the deeper explanation of this mission. And if we see something negative, perhaps we could exploit that negative tendency to learn a positive from the negative. How is that possible? I'll share with you a story of Reb Zusha of Anapol, who was a great chassid and a Hasidic master in his own right. I had the privilege of going to Ukraine. I believe it was either Ukraine or Russia. I was in both places. It was a long trip. But I went to the grave of Reb Zusha of Anapol. I went to Anapol. Anyway, he taught a very, very beautiful teaching. He says we have to learn something from everyone. He says, I once learned 7 lessons from a thief. The student said, from a thief? What are the 7 lessons you can learn from a thief? So he said as follows. He says, number 1, a thief. What he does, he keeps to himself. Number 2, he's willing to take risks to attain his goals. Number 3, he's meticulously careful with all the particulars of his operation, regardless of whether it is a major component or a small detail. What else? Number 4, a thief invests great effort in what he does. 5, he is swift. 6, he is always optimistic. Yes, if a thief is not optimistic, he's not going to be too successful. And number 7, if he fails the first time, he keeps coming back for another try. So it's interesting. Here you have this great Hasidic master. He saw a fellow, who was a thief. He caught him in the act. So most people would say, oh, this is a terrible person. There's nothing I can learn from this person. No, Rabbi Zusha says, there are 7 traits that I can learn from my life. I think, by the way, these 7, you can make a whole course just about the 7 lessons that you can learn from a thief. So this ties back to a wise person can learn from everyone. You can learn from the good, you can learn from the bad, and you can learn from the ugly. And we have to recognize that everyone is God's creation, and everyone really, even a person who does bad things, ultimately is a creation of God, ultimately has a soul. So ultimately, every person, even the people that we're not proud of, we dig deep inside, who are to their soul, to their essence, they are goodness. They have goodness. They are godliness. So even if we see someone that we're not proud of, or we say we can't really learn anything positive, we have to remember that person has a soul, and the soul is good, and God created the soul, and you can't say God made a mistake. So it's an interesting way to look at people. Now, I know some of you, normally when I share this in a class, people start asking, what about Hitler? Tell me about Hitler. Does Hitler has goodness in it? Listen, that's more complicated. Hashem created everyone. You know, I'm sure Hashem can answer that. However, let's talk about your neighbor. Let's talk about your family member. Let's talk about your business partner. Let's talk about the people that we know all around us who, for whatever reason, um, you know, we're disappointed with. We have to be able to know that they have godliness inside of them as well. Okay. All right. I just put myself back on the screen. I hope that that's better for everyone. Here's a story about here's an interesting story from the Talmud. Actually, it's a very disturbing story, but it's very interesting. The Talmud says that Rabbi Lazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, was once coming home from his house of his teacher, and he was riding leisurely on his donkey, and he was feeling good. You know, sometimes you feel good. He was feeling good. The sun was shining, the birds were chirping. He was feeling good about himself. And suddenly another person walked by, and he said something very nasty to the person. He says, "Empty one, how ugly is this person? Are all the people of your city as ugly as you are?" Wow. The man replied, "I don't know, but go and tell the craftsman who made me, how ugly is the vessel which you created." Suddenly, Rabbi Lazar realized what he did. He caught himself in a moment of pride, and he was so embarrassed. So he started to beg from the person. He says, "Please forgive me." But the man kept on walking. So he chases the man all the way to the city the man was going. And suddenly, when Rebbe Lazar comes into the city, into the town square, following this man who he's begging for forgiveness, all the people in the village come to greet. "Oh, the great Torah scholar, Rebbe Lazar, is here." So this other man that Rebbe Lazar says he's so ugly, right? He turns to the people. He says, "Who's this man?" They said, "You don't know who this is. This is Rebbe Lazar. He's one of the greatest rabbis we have in Israel." So the man exclaimed, "If this man is a teacher, may there not be any more like him in Israel." They said they said, "Why?" So he said the whole story, what happened. He said, "This is what the man said to me. This is what Rebbe Lazar said to me." They said to him, "Nevertheless, forgive him, for he is a man a man greatly learned in Torah." So the man replied, "For your sakes, I'll forgive him, but only on the condition that he does not act the same way ever again." Immediately afterwards, Rabbi Lazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, entered the Torah hall and expounded, "A person should always be flexible like a reed and not hard like a cedar." It's a very disturbing story. The sages tell us that you can't really learn the story the way it was, the way you read it on the surface, because it doesn't make sense. Such a great Torah scholar would speak in such a demeanor, in such a horrible way to another person. Talk about their looks. I mean, that's not right. Talk about the way someone looks. That's not the way that. It couldn't be such a great Torah scholar made such a mistake. So the sages say, what happened? Obviously, Rabbi Lazar wasn't talking about the man's physical appearance, but he was talking about the man's spiritual appearance, which means this person had some kind of, he was doing something. Rabbi Lazar saw him do something. It doesn't say what it is, but he was doing something that was repulsive. He was doing something that upstanding individual does not do. I don't know. Use your imagination. So now, actually, the story makes a little more sense. I think we could all relate to it. Sometimes you see someone acting in a horrible, nasty, despicable way, And as a result, you want to say something. You want to put the person in their place. Don't act that way. That's disgusting. You disgust me. That's more of a common thing where you want to put someone in their place when they act in a terrible way. But even so, the man says to him, to Rebbe Lazar, that if you don't like the way I am, you know, you don't like the way I am, speak to the one who made me, speak to my creator. Basically, he was teaching Rebbe Lazar a very important lesson. Yes, I may have challenges in my life. I may do things that you're not proud of and I'm not proud of, but don't judge me. God made me. God gave me my challenges. God gave me my struggle. This is my struggle. This is not your struggle. And go complain to God that he put me in this situation, that I act in this way. That's the deeper way of understanding the story. Um, so ultimately, it's this idea that what the story brings out, especially with the explanation of the sages, is that God creates every person. And even though a person might not act appropriately sometimes people act in a bad way. Ultimately, that's not who they are because Hashem created their soul. Hashem doesn't make mistakes. The soul remains holy. The soul remains pristine. The soul remains holy regardless of the mistakes we make in our lives. So a wise man learns from everyone. Even if I see someone acting in a terrible way, I have to remember this person ultimately is good, and there's a struggle here that maybe I can't understand. And then try to look a little deeper. Okay. How do we look more positive at the people around us? I'll share with you a story of Rabbi Yitzchak of Barditchev, one of my favorite personalities. You could go to Barditchev today, you could go to Rabbi Levik's shul, you could go to the cemetery where he's buried, also in Ukraine. So Rabbi Yitzchak of Barditchev used to always see the positive in people. And when people would see the negative in other people, Rabbi Yitzchak somehow would put a positive spin on it. What's the story? One time there was a wagon driver who was in a rush to get his business started. So he still had his talis and tefillin on, and he was putting oil on the wheels of his wagon. He was lubricating the wheels of his wagon so that he could get to work right away. And Rabbi Yitzchak of Barditchev is walking by this man who's doing this with his students. Some of the students looked at the man and said, "Look at this man. While he's praying, what's he doing? He's fixing his wagon." Terrible person. Rabbi Yitzchak looks at the man and says the statement in a completely different way. He says, "Look at this Jew. Even when he fixes his wagon, he prays to God." So it's a whole different way of seeing the exact same situation, looking at it in the positive light. This is who Rabbi Yitzchak Barditchev was and how he saw people. He chose to look at things in a positive way. The verse the Mishnah says is from all my teachers I've learned, which means teachers plural. And there's another lesson to learn from here. What does it mean, teachers plural? The answer is a person should not have just one teacher. A person should have many teachers. We should have teachers that are greater than us. We should have teachers that perhaps are not as knowledgeable as us, but many teachers. What happens is when we have many teachers, we get a much healthier outlook on life. It works in our eyesight as well. If I only had one eye, God forbid, I would say, or I would see things in two dimensions. Why do we see things in three dimensions? Because we have two eyes. Two eyes working together, you see three dimensions. The same idea in our life with learning. We should have many teachers, the Mishnah is saying, not just one, so that we could have a wide a perspective on life and understand things more complex. So teachers is plural. As it says in Avodah Zarah, in the Talmud Avodah Zarah, a person who learns Torah from just one teacher never sees a sign of blessing. Okay. So that is wisdom. A wise person learns from everyone. All right, what's the next line in the Mishnah? Who's a strong person? It says a strong person is one who conquers their own inclination. That's a truly strong person. So a strong person is not a person that could lift a lot of weights. It's a strong person that's physically strong. But the Mishnah says a strong person is not someone that runs a marathon. A spiritually strong, the definition of strength is a person that could control their urges. The most powerful things we have are our desires and our motivations, but sometimes our desires could promote destructive behavior. And our own desires can sometimes become our greatest enemies in our life. You know, we talk about Egypt, Passover, going out of Egypt. We talk about going out of our own personal Egypt. There's an inner Pharaoh inside of us that doesn't let us live forward. Most of the problems we have today are not outside of us, but is inside of us. The saying is, we all have the key to our own prisons, but the key is in our hand. It's in our own hand. But we have to let ourselves out. So our own desires and our own inclinations many times hold us back. A strong person is someone who can control their feelings, their thoughts. I'll share with you first a joke that's not related, just because I didn't say a joke yet. You need a couple jokes. So there's three individuals, back in the old country that were being punished for a crime they did, and the punishment was lashes. An Italian, a Russian, and a Jewish fellow. So they lined the three people up. They said, we're going to let you put something on your back, to soften the blow of the lashes we're about to give you. They asked the Italian fellow, what do you want to put on your back? So he says, put on my back oil. I guess he figured when you hit with a whip, with the oil, it slides off. It lessens the impact. They give him lashes. And they go to the Russian guy, we'll call him Boris. They say, what do you want on your back? And the Russian guy says, nothing. Just whip me. I'm a man. I'll take it. And they whip this guy Boris, and he yells and screams, but he takes it. They ask the Jewish fellow, what do you want on your back? He says, I want Boris on my back. Anyway, so true strength in Judaism is inner strength. And here's a story to illustrate this. The Rebbe of Sons, Rabbi Chaim Halberstam, 1797 to 1876, had a dream to have a talis katan, not the big talis we wear in shul, but the small talis we're supposed to wear under our clothing. And it's like a big garment, it has a hole in it, and you wear it like a poncho under your shirt. But he didn't want just any talis katan, he wanted one that was made in the holy land of Israel. That was his dream. And in those days, they didn't have like Amazon Prime where you go online and you click 3 times, and 2 days later, you have any product you could dream of. To get a product from Israel in those days was very costly, and he was not a wealthy man, but this was his dream, and eventually he saves up enough money to get material from Israel, and he brings it to a local tailor. And everyone in the village knows the rabbi's dream, and the tailor feels honored that the rabbi chose him to make this talis katan from the holy cloth from Israel. It was a big piece of wool. The tailor was also very nervous. His hands were shaking. He realized what kind of honor he had. And so what he intended to do is he wanted to cut a hole in the middle of the garment. So what do? You take a big garment, you fold it in four, and then you cut a little piece off the corner and you open it up and you have a hole in the middle. But what did he do? He folded it 4 times, but he lost track. He folded an extra time or two. So when he made the cut and he opened the talus, he realized there wasn't one hole in the talus, katan, in the tzitzis. There were 2 holes. And he was so embarrassed. He was freaking out. He couldn't believe that finally he was given the honor to give the rabbi finally this garment. And now it was completely destroyed, and he was embarrassed. His face was red. He brings it back to the rabbi. And he apologizes profusely. With trembling hands, he gives the garment to the rabbi. But the Rebbe only smiled and he said, "My friend, a talis katan really needs 2 holes. 1 hole to insert one's head, and a second hole to teach Chaim not to get upset." So Chaim is his name. This is a tremendous ability to be able to really not get angry, to hold back the emotion, not to embarrass someone else. It's not easy. People all the time say things in a moment of anger. And sometimes those things, like we spoke about 2 weeks ago, we gave a class about gossip. Sometimes those things that we say, we cannot take back. We cannot undo. And it's pretty amazing that if we could control the impulses we have, that's true strength. Ezehu Asher, who is a wealthy person? A wealthy person is someone that's happy with their lot. More money and possessions never bring satisfaction. The sages tell us the following truth. If a person has 100 zuzim, they will automatically want 200 zuzim. And when they have 200 zuzim, they will want 400 zuzim. People often dream, oh, if only I won the lottery, if only I had X amount of money, then I'd be happy. Then I'd be satisfied, right? It doesn't work that way. As soon as we reach our goal, there's something in the human condition that says, well, that was nice. Now I want more. And so that pursuit is never ending. If we could find happiness in the things that we have, and we find happiness, then we could appreciate more. That's a very, very important teaching. In fact, in this Mishnah, it says, it is fortunate for you in this world, and it's good for you in the world to come. Why does it say that in the Mishnah? Because it helps us 2 ways. One is it helps us in this world. A person who's not constantly needing more in their lives is able to find inner happiness and peace. They don't have anxiety. They're able just to sit and breathe and live and smile and be alive. So that's why it helps us in this world. Why does it help us in the world to come? Because a person who is not constantly trying to chase the dollar, always needing more, never being satisfied, never allowing any space for other things. So when are we going to work on our spirituality? When are we going to work on being a bench? When are we going to cultivate relationships? When are we going to commit acts of goodness, kindness, and love? We're so busy trying to get more and more. But if I could be satisfied with what I have, I could spend my time doing more meaningful things. And so the Mishnah says it's also good for you in the world to come as well. I heard a saying, some people are so poor, all they have is money. Good saying. There's an interesting story told about a certain rabbi who was in the marketplace, and he saw one of his congregants was running, middle of the day's work. So he calls out to him, Abu Leifstu, where are you running? In Yiddish, Abu Leifstu, where are you running? So the guy said, I'm running to make a parnasa, running to make a livelihood. The rabbi looks at him and says, and how do you know your livelihood is that way? Maybe your livelihood is that way. And instead of running towards your parnasa, you're running away from your parnasa. It's important to have space in our life to stop, to pause, to take an account what's going on. But people always want more. We're never satisfied with what we have. That's how it works. There's a nice story told about this is a cute story. There's once a wealthy man that goes on vacation to one of the islands. And he's sitting on the beach and he looks on the rocks and he sees an old fisherman standing there fishing. So this businessman made it in life. He walks over to the old man and he says, why are you fishing with only one fishing rod? Sorry, the old man catches his fish and he starts going home. The guy asks him, why are you going home? Stay another hour, catch a couple more fish. He says, why? He says, well, if you catch more fish and you sell them, maybe you could buy a second fishing rod. He says, and then what? Well, now you'll have two fishing rods, you'll catch double the amount of fish. He said, okay, and then what? Well, so if you start catching double the amount of fish for a while, maybe you could buy a little boat, go a little further and catch bigger fish. He says, and then what? He says, well, then you could go and, catch more fish and then maybe get a bigger boat and then you could catch much more fish, make a lot more money. And he says, and then what? He says, well, you get a lot more money. Now you could hire a whole crew of people to fish for you. And you could, then he says, then what? He says, well, then you buy a fleet of ships and you have a whole army of people working for you, making all the money. He says, and then what? Well, then you could sit on the beach over here and you could relax. You could look at the water. And the old man looks at him and says, sir, look at me. That's exactly what I'm doing right now. The Mishnah is not saying to be lazy. The Mishnah is not saying not to try to be successful. That's not what the Mishnah is saying. Judaism wants us to be successful. And the reason is the more successful we are, the more acts of tzedakah and goodness we can bring to the world. The point of the Mishnah is our reference, our frame of mind. We have to be able to be happy with what we have. If we could be happy with a little, then we could be happy with much more. We can make space for other things in our lives, but in no way is the Mishnah talking about being a minimalist. That's not the message. Judaism encourages people to be successful. The Talmud tells us that many of the sages would give a lot of respect to wealthy people. Not only because they were fundraisers, but for another reason, for a spiritual reason. And that is that Hashem gives certain people large amounts of wealth. Really it is Hashem saying to those people, I trust you to give tzedakah. I trust you to be, a banker for me, for bringing goodness and kindness to the world. So the rabbis of the Talmud would give respect to people that have so much, because the way they see it is Hashem trusts you. You must have a special soul, that you have the capacity of so much chesed, of so much kindness. Anyway, interesting way of looking at things. So, Ezehu Asher Sameach Bechelko is a person that's happy with what they are, with what they have. They don't get caught in the rat race of life. By the way, the word rat race comes from the Talmud. The Talmud tells us, why are all the inhabitants of the world compared to rodents? As rodents scurry about and hoard, not knowing for what purpose it is, so do the inhabitants of the world scurry and collect and scurry and hoard without knowing for what they are hoarding. Jerusalem, Talmud, Shabbos 14, page 1. So you ever heard the saying, a rat race? Now you know where it comes from. There's an exception, though. We said, who is a wealthy person? A person's happy with their lot. The Alter Rebbe, the author of the Tanya, the first Chabad Rebbe, here's an exception to this rule. We have to be happy with our lot when it comes to the physical things we own. However, when it comes to our spiritual assets, when it comes to our mitzvahs, a person should never, ever be satisfied. When it comes to the size of my car, my house, when it comes to the amount of cars I own, and money in my bank account, I should be happy with my lot. But when it comes to acts of mitzvahs and kindness, never should a person say, oh, I'm good, I did enough mitzvahs today. When it comes to mitzvahs, there's no limit, and we should, quote unquote, be greedy and try to attain as many mitzvahs as possible. And finally, the last teaching, we're almost done here. We have only 3 minutes left. Last teaching, who is honored? A person who honors their fellow creature. For those who honor me, I accord honor. And those who scorn me, I will be demeaned. This is talking about those who honor God and not other people. So a person that's honored is a person that shows honor to other people. It's interesting, the language in this Mishnah, it doesn't use the word anashim or like people. It doesn't say people. It uses the word brias. It actually doesn't say those who honor people. It says those who honor brias are creations. It's not people. Normally, if you want to say a person, there's other words for a person. Adam is a person, right? But here it says brias. We have to honor God's creations. And there's an important point here, and that is sometimes there are people that don't have a lot going for them. Sometimes there are people that there's not much to honor. I'm not going to give names or examples because that would be Lashon Hara, but I'm sure that you've encountered a person in your life that you thought you had an inclination that said, oh, there's not much to honor here. There's not much of a person here for whatever reason. The way they act, their accomplishments. So the language here is God's creations, God's creatures, which means even if you in your own vision, and you shouldn't have such a vision about a person, but if you said, oh, this is not even a person, there's nothing to honor here, even such a person you should show honor to, show derech, show respect to. And that shows that you are an honorable person. So the language of the Mishnah of Brias is very interesting. And our job is to actualize this divine image in our own lives, to discover that in other people there's a spark of godliness, and in ourselves there's a spark of godliness too. We have to show, by being disrespectful to another human being, ultimately we're being disrespectful to God. Going back to the story of Rabbi Lazar, who says to this person, how ugly are you? The man says, you have a problem, speak to the one who made this vessel. Speak to my creator, don't talk to me. So when we don't show honor and respect to someone, even if we have reasons, the person is not an oppressive person. Ultimately, God made that person, and that person has a neshama. So by being disrespectful to other people, really we're being disrespectful to Hashem. Doesn't mean we have to go and praise people that are doing bad things. But the way we communicate with those people has to be in a place of respect, of dignity. When we talk to people with dignity and with respect, we actually have a chance of changing them and inspiring them. When I see a person who's doing something wrong and I say, low life, loser, and I tell them what they're doing wrong, there's no way the person's even going to listen. If I look at the person as God's creation, a spark of divinity, realize there's potential, and then I speak in a dignified way to that person, I actually have a chance of changing them and inspiring them. It's unbelievable. You see it sometimes in couples that are struggling, not getting along for whatever reason, family members that are not getting along for whatever reason. People get into heated debates and arguments, and everyone's trying to change everyone. 10 years, 20 years, 50 years go by. Everyone's trying to change each other, but nobody changes. Why not? First of all, because you don't change people. People change themselves. But second of all, a lot of times a loved one wants to change someone. What do? They speak out of annoyance. They speak in a negative way. And when I hear someone speak to me negatively, my natural reaction as a human being is to put up walls and fences, and I don't hear. You have a couple married for 15 years, they're trying to change each other. Nothing. No, not a dent, but they don't stop. They drive each other to sugar. But if they speak with dignity, with honor, with respect, with love, with compassion, with care, suddenly the other person has a chance to listen, to hear, and maybe they might change. I always say, if you want to give some advice to someone, some criticism to a person, before you say criticism, say 5 compliments to the person. But not fake compliments, like real, genuine compliments, okay? And then say something critical with the right words, and you'd be surprised. You might actually make some headway. Everyone has a divine spark inside. Everyone has to be treated with respect. We have to treat ourselves with respect. Sometimes we don't give ourselves the honor and dignity we deserve. Some people, they look in the mirror, they only see their faults. They don't see their neshama. They don't see their potential. This is another problem. The Rebbe, I'll finish with these words. The Rebbe would often say, your birth is God's way of saying you matter. The fact that a person was born into this world, no such thing as an accident, as a mistake, no such thing. Hashem creates every single person. Hashem sends every soul into the world. The fact that a person is born is God's way of saying you matter, but more than you matter. God's way of saying, you see the mountains, you see the galaxies, you see the planets, you see the infinite amount of angels, you see the billions of people, you see the talent, you see the beauty, you see everything in the world. All that is not complete until I brought you into this world. You have a unique light. You have a unique message. You have a unique gift to bring to this world. The Rebbe's teaching is so important. We have to know this about ourselves. Every child has to know this. Your birth, your existence is God's way of saying you matter. You have a purpose. So we have to treat ourselves in a dignified manner as well. So dear friends, I hope you enjoyed and appreciated some of the ideas that we shared today. We expressed 4 areas of life. We have beautiful suggestions for how we should live. We spoke about wealth, honor. We spoke about happiness. And we spoke about, what's the last one? Wealth, honor, strength. I'm going to unmute everyone. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And hopefully we'll see you next Wednesday again for the next class. Hold on. Unmute all. Welcome aboard, guys. How are you? Any thoughts? Any suggestions?
No. Strength, wealth, honor. What was the last one?
So we said 4 areas of life we spoke about. Wealth, honor, happiness, and strength.
Happiness.
No, I'm sorry. Wisdom, power, wealth, and honor.
Huh? Is,
Well,
David Farber, welcome. The lady is here.
Speaker's back on, so some people have.